Top of the Sunday morning, everybody. Welcome to The Sweat, presented by Comcast Business. Comcast Business is powering connectivity at the Players' Championship. It's good to have all of you guys and gals here with us today for the next 2 hours on DraftKings Network and VSiN. I am Emerson Latzia. Steve Buchanan is here. Julian Edlow once again joining us virtually. Gentlemen, we've got a jam-packed show, and we will be tackling just about anything and everything your meaty minds desire on this glorious St. Patrick's Day. So yes, plenty of updates from the players throughout this program. We are keeping a close eye on the leaderboard because there are major champions hovering near the top. Christopher Powers of Golf Digest will deliver a live report from TPC Sawgrass coming up in this show. And champions were crowned, some expected, some unexpected, around college basketball yesterday. We have 5 more automatic bids that will be delivered later today. It is Selection Sunday, so happy Selection Sunday to those of you who celebrate. Let's start, though, guys, by working up a sweat here, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and...
You're going to kick us off?
I'm going to kick us off, all right? Okay. I'll tee it up first because yesterday I sat here and I said, let's do some Sahithi Gala top 10, right? Plus 180 on that yesterday.
Yeah.
Dude absolutely went on a tear to close out the third round. Where is he? Top 5 right now. You know what his odds are right now to finish top 10? Minus 225. Now listen, he could still crap the bed today. Fingers crossed he doesn't. So I'm going back to the board. I'm looking at Doug Gim. So he is T12. Doug Gim, by the way, only player to finish in the top 12 after 54 holes 3 of the last 4 years at TPC Sawgrass, okay? His odds plus 260 to finish top 10 right now. This man on 17 yesterday had his Tiger Woods better than most moment on the Island Green, the iconic 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass. What it takes to be successful on this course, finding fairways, hitting greens, and avoiding the water. That's something that guys like Rory McIlroy and other big hitters have not been able to do. So Doug Gim, I'm going to sprinkle a little something on you today. Plus 260, top 10. Do it. The Gim Reaper. This is your time to shine. Do not let me down and make me look stupid because I can do that enough on my own. Thank you, Douglas. Get out there, crush it. Toss darts, hit piss missiles, roll a good meatball for daddy, okay? I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling really good. I had a lot of coffee.
What did you call him? The Gim Reaper?
The Gim Reaper. He's
okay.
Doug Gim, right?
I mean, I guess I can
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's not too
My
bad.
Twitter account is now a Doug Gim Stan account. All right? Sure. Hey, let's go, boys. Let's go, boys.
If your bet yesterday cashes, would that be your first cash from your Working Up a Sweat segment?
No, I had like a top 5 or a top 10 one a couple, like 2 weeks ago. My Rory won last week. He was like, oh, dude, Lotzie is betting on me again, so let me go out and play my worst final round in the past like 2 years. But not today. Doug Gim loves me, and I love Doug. What do you got today? You want to work up a sweat for us here, big dude?
I just had to get into the free agent market for football and how little starting quarterbacks from this past season are going for.
Yeah.
It is absolutely crazy to think how little other teams are kind of valuing these starters that we've had in the past season. Now, obviously, this is all spurned because of the Justin Fields trade yesterday going to the Steelers for a 6th round pick. But what really kind of jogs my mind here, and is kind of crazy, is all these teams that need quarterbacks coming up in this upcoming draft. Well, you know, we've been hearing rumors that 4 of the first 6 picks could be a quarterback. None of those teams could have given up a 6th round pick and take a flyer on Justin Fields and then still draft a quarterback. So you'd basically have 2 lottery tickets. One is going to cost you a 6th round pick and then one of your first picks, which you were going to do anyways. But then some of the other deals that we've had so far, like Desmond Ridder going for Rondale Moore going to Atlanta and Arizona, that swap. Mac Jones, a 6th round pick, which was probably an overpay for the Jacksonville Jaguars, if we're being quite honest. because Mac Jones is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. We've said that many times.
Yeah, listen, it's about keeping Trevor comfortable there.
I guess. But even Sam Howell going for a 3rd and a 5th, going to Seattle. Like, I know, like, Sam Howell, like, had a very bad second half. He was great in the first half. But the guy didn't even have time to throw. That's why he was sacked 60-plus times. I mean, what do you want from the man? If anything, like, the Eagles getting, the Steelers getting 3 picks for Kenny Pickett. Granted, they're 2 7th-round in a 3rd, but that feels like the best return that we've gotten from a quarterback so far.
He got traded for more draft capital than Justin Fields.
That's what I'm saying.
Kenny Pickett.
I was going to say the Steelers gained draft capital by switching Pickett to Fields.
But it's crazy to think like how little these quarterbacks are going for when these were like legit starters in this past season. And like we haven't even seen anything on like the Zach Wilson front or anything like that. So there could be more coming down the pipeline here. But I think it just makes this upcoming draft just shows like how quarterback heavy these teams are going to be going for. And we're going to talk about this later in the show here.
For sure.
We're going to do some draft talk here. But like, you know, we're going to see so many quarterbacks fly off the board early, and I think we're going to see teams overpay to kind of move up. Like the Vikings are in a great position to move up here, try to get one of those quarterbacks. Like what is going to be that they're going to need to get back, because quarterback is such a needy position this upcoming year, because there's so many guys that, quite frankly, wouldn't be starting on a normal basis. That's kind of how it feels right now. So I just couldn't believe that he only went for a 6th-round pick. I'm surprised that none of the teams that need a quarterback weren't in the mix here or didn't end up making that type of offer for Justin Fields when he really is a lottery ticket. Is he really that bad that, you know, you couldn't give up a 6th-round pick, especially for a team like the Patriots or the Commanders or whatnot? So just surprised by the moves and how little they're going for it.
I mean, that 2021 draft class looks like an absolute debacle right
horrible.
now. Trevor Lawrence, the closest thing to a franchise quarterback, at least through the first 3 years here. And we'll see what lessons have been learned as, once again, this quarterback class looks stacked. There's a lot of quarterback-needy teams at the top of this draft. Jules, what do you want to do here? What are you warming up with today for the people?
Well, I'm going to build off of Steve's really quick before I go. That 2021 draft class actually looks pretty good compared to 2022 when it comes to quarterbacks. And on that Vikings move that Steve mentioned, that is absolutely Minnesota moving up for a quarterback, because you don't move up to number 23 unless you have a plan to package 23 and 11 to go higher. Teams don't move up to a random number like that unless it's draft night and you know who you're targeting and getting. If you're doing that, before St. Patty's Day, what are you just saying, like, we have 23 players we really like in this draft. If we get any of them, we'll be happy. No. They're packaging picks and they're moving up. So Minnesota is going to go up and get a quarterback. That is, and it would seem like New England would make the most sense. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but that's absolutely what that move was. All right. It's Selection Sunday. I am working up a sweat about the run that NC State just went on. I came on here yesterday. I said UNC is going to blow out NC State. You can lay the points. You can use them in money line parlays. NC State's run to win the ACC is probably the most impressive conference tournament run I've ever seen. They won 5 games in 5 days. Last night they were playing after midnight in overtime against Virginia. 2 nights ago they were playing in overtime against Virginia. Past midnight in D.C. They turn around and are trailing by 1 at halftime to UNC. And the Wolfpack are the team that has their foot on the gas in the second half to close out that game over the Tar Heels. NC State was 100-1 to win the ACC tournament on Tuesday. You could have bet that on Tuesday, 100-1, and they come through and win it. By winning it, NC State's coach Kevin Keatts activates a 2-year contract extension. He was on the hot seat. He lost 4 games in a row coming into the tournament. He now activates a 2-year contract extension, gives himself a $400,000 raise next year, and a $100,000 bonus right now for winning the ACC tournament. On Tuesday, they were talking about firing him. So I just think that the NC State run is the most ridiculous run that we have seen in my memory in conference tournaments. So that brings me to my take. I'm going to be fading NC State in the tournament.
Oh,
Everybody's going to love. Yeah, I had to be the brain to speak in here real quick. Everybody's going to love this team. They've been playing fantastic. It's an awesome story. DJ Burns is like inhuman. He weighs 375 pounds and he can just play the majority of the game and keep backing people down and hit every shot. People are going to love this team in March Madness. This has to catch up to them. This run has to catch up to them. So I will, unless they get some fantastic matchup, which maybe they will, I will be going against NC State. An honorable mention real quick.
Yeah.
Long Beach State fired their coach on Monday, said he's not going to be returning next season. Long Beach State won the Big West last night. They're going dancing their coach that they fired this week.
That's incredible. And NC State making history along the way, too, with that upset victory. Jules, becoming the first double-digit seed to win a conference tournament in more than a decade. And even more surprising is that the 11 seed Temple can join the pack today in the AAC title game. So what a day. What a weekend.
And you know what?
What a sport.
I feel like there should be a time where you should talk about all this for like 3 hours.
Yeah. That's a great team,
Wow.
Steve, because tomorrow we have the Sweat bracket breakdown, 6 o'clock Eastern time to 9 o'clock Eastern time, Monday night. Little Sweat after dark.
That's 3 hours.
Let's go, baby. Let's run through all the winners and losers from the day that just wrapped up here on the Sweat. So coming up, we'll talk super shockers, big winners, lively losers, and bubbles bursting next. Happy Selection Sunday to all who observe. So when this pleasantly plump field is finally rounded out and filled up, tomorrow, we're breaking down the whole thing for 3 hours on DraftKings Network and VSiN with the Sweat Bracket Breakdown, 6 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow night, taking you all the way up to 9 o'clock Eastern Time, because that is 3 hours. And that tomorrow, the Bracket Breakdown, will be a 3-hour show. 5 automatic bids will be handed out today. We had 13 yesterday. 36 at-large teams will join them later tonight. A field, Julian Edlow, at one point we thought maybe UNC was going to be one of the 4 number 1 seeds. And then yesterday happened, my friend. One day after pulling off a miracle, NC State pulls off the impossible. So we're talking the 10 seed here. We touched on it in our last block. You did, defeating top-seeded North Carolina 84-76 in the ACC tournament title game, completing a stunning 5 wins in 5-day run and clinching the conference's automatic bid out of nowhere. Those 5 wins, by the way, NC State now has more wins than the Washington Wizards at Capital One Arena so far this season. We'll see if the Wizards can match NC State's 5 wins tonight by trying to knock off the Celtics. But right now, Jules, that's an embarrassing stat for the Wizards. But NC State, what can you say? What else can you add to the incredible run that they've been on? And what the hell happened to the Tar Heels?
Yeah, I mean, UNC was on pace. They weren't playing great defense in the first half, but they were scoring. They were up 40-39 at halftime over NC State. They stopped scoring. The offense went into a rut when it went to the under 4-minute timeout in the second half. So just over 16 minutes into the second half, they had 22 points in that half. So somehow, some way, it was NC State playing their 5th game in 5 days and going to some overtimes and having guys hurt. Like, guys were literally leaving the game cramping, coming back in for a possession, hitting a 3, cramping back up, going to the bench. Guys go playing offense, defense with 4 fouls, going back and forth to the bench. And they still had the momentum and still had the energy over UNC. I can't recall, a lesser team like that playing with that kind of energy in those kind of circumstances against a far superior team. So it does speak to how down the ACC is this year, I think. I don't think the ACC is a great league. It certainly exposed some of UNC's holes, and maybe they won't get a 1 seed. But, another team like Houston, their holes were exposed yesterday. They scored 42 points. There's other than UConn, there's no clear dominant team in the field, and that just kind of reminded us of that with the fact that NC State can come in and play like that and beat a team like NC State and take away a mortgage payment from me in the process.
Well, it sounds good, man. You could sleep on my couch. There's also a bench outside my apartment. I'm looking out for you, dude. So North Carolina's conference tournament title drought goes on. It's last coming in 2016 here. But in the Big East, my dude, guess what? First tourney title since 2011 for UConn. Marquette last season eliminating UConn in the Big East tournament, right? Went on to win the conference tournament in addition to the regular season title. But the top seeded UConn Huskies claiming their sweet revenge yesterday against the 3 seed Golden Eagles. So UConn pulling away in the second half and throttling Marquette 47-33 in the final 20 minutes here. So UConn making a strong case for the number 1 overall seed here, Julian?
I would be shocked if they're not, especially since Purdue, Houston, UNC, Arizona, and Tennessee, they all pooped the bed in their conference tournaments. So UConn should be number 1 overall in my mind. If they're not, whatever. But they're clearly the best team in the field. And they're going to be in the East bracket. So they're going to play 2 games in Brooklyn and 2 games in Boston, assuming they keep winning. So those 4 games will be home floor for them to get to Arizona, essentially. So minus 110 on UConn to make the Final Four. You can ask, is it a good time to bet a future? It's Selection Sunday. Let's wait and see the bracket before we bet any futures. If you ask if there's one thing to bet that is on the board right now, it's UConn to make the Final Four at -110 because the path is there, and I literally don't care who they play along the way. You put any team in front of them, I'm taking UConn. Hopefully they don't get an awful draw. Make the path as easy as possible. That would be nice, especially if they're the number 1 overall seed. But there's not a team that you can show me there that you can put in UConn's way that I'm afraid of, particularly with home floor. So the one pre-bracket reveal future that I will make is UConn -110 to reach the Final Four.
Okay, and right after them, +130, Houston. That is Houston's odds to make the Final Four. But man, oh man, did they not just get beat yesterday by Iowa State? They got freaking dominated in a stunning 69-41 victory for the Cyclones here, man, to win the Big 12 tournament. So the Cyclones started hot, finished even hotter. They took a 7-point halftime lead, Jules, and grew it to 32 at one point. It's just the 4th Houston loss on the season, the 2nd to the Cyclones here. What kind of a statement did Iowa State just send the rest of the basketball world by winning the Big 12 title?
Iowa State's for real. I don't think it's a huge statement because they already kind of did this. We mentioned it on the show yesterday that this building is an Iowa State building. It was home floor for Iowa State in this game. And they did something they've already done this season, which is impressive, beat Houston at home. They essentially did that again. This is a very good team. The problem is they're just as likely to have one of those games where they score 41 points just like Houston did yesterday if they fall into the wrong matchup in the tournament. So I like the Cyclones a lot. They have all the pieces. They defend, and they can score like we saw yesterday. But they can also come undone a little bit, and that would be my concern with them along the way. So that is a team that I very much want to see their draw before I can get invested in them. And I'm likely thinking they'll be a 2, but probably draw one of the weaker ones.
All right, so talk to me now then about, after those games, other results we saw yesterday. How has seeding right now, in your opinion, been affected? Because we had some shockers, and then we didn't even really get to the AAC, where that appears to be a 2-bid league now because FAU is going to be in there, and there's Temple or either UAB who is going to win this thing, and neither one of them were in the conversation of receiving an at-large bid.
Yeah, I mean, I would just pause with a little bit of caution and say, are we sure FAU is in over, Providence? FAU has lost to a lot of bad teams. They have some signature wins, but they've lost to a lot of bad teams, some quad 3 and 4 losses. Providence has none of those. They have 6 quad 1 wins. We can talk bubble. I think Providence is clearly a better team than FAU. I think they have a better resume. We'll see what the committee thinks. So the upper seeding we can talk about. Kentucky loses their opening game. Tennessee loses their opening game. Where do we seed them? The real talk on seeding is the bubble, because all these teams are stealing bids, and now we have all types of teams that should be 13s, 14s, but because so many bids are being stolen, they're going to be 11s, 12s, and they're going to be overseeded. They're going to be really poor 11, 12 seeds. So I think a lot of these sexy 12 over 5 upsets or whatever, the 12 seed is going to be a worse 12 seed than we're accustomed to see. So I'm not saying don't pick upsets, because there's going to be plenty, but there's a chance that we see a lot more worse teams get in the field, if that makes sense. And you got to seed them somewhere, since there's so many bad teams at the bottom, like a Temple getting in and NC State getting in, all these teams getting in, and they're going to have to play really good teams. So that could cause some issues in the bracket.
So you're saying then some of these big dogs who had shocking losses yesterday, their seeding may not be as impacted as much as the teams who weren't expected to win.
Kind of like Kentucky will still drop for that loss for sure. But let's say they went from a 4 to a 5. It doesn't matter as much that they dropped from a 4 to a 5, because the 12 they're going to be playing wasn't even supposed to be in the tournament. so they're still going to get a good matchup, if that makes sense. So, sure, it would have been nice to be a 4 playing a 13, but the 12 seed they're going to play instead still probably wasn't going to be a tournament team to begin with.
All right, my guy, hang out, because coming up after this break, and we will talk more about the conference tournament finals coming up in the show. Again, 5 more bids will be dished out today. But after this break, we're going to return to the NFL. We had the shocking trade yesterday with Justin Fields, but also the NFL draft order, where you and Steve expect some of these big-time signal callers to go. Once again, the Pittsburgh Steelers have fleeced the Chicago Bears in a trade. Yesterday, Pittsburgh acquiring quarterback and former first-round pick Justin Fields from the Bears for a 2025 sixth-round pick.
Crazy.
I know. And this comes less than 2 years after Pittsburgh traded Chase Claypool to Chicago in exchange for a pick the Steelers ultimately used to draft corner Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well.
So what do you guys say? We overreact right now with some NFL hangover. And Bukes, I'll let you go first here because you touched on it as we were working up a sweat at the top of the show. Give me grades right now for this trade for both sides, Bears and the Steelers.
I mean, how is it not an A for the Steelers, right? Like, they are risking next to nothing to acquire Justin Fields. Now, Russell Wilson is on that one-year contract. You know, he's expected to be like a bridge quarterback. Like they say, like even though Justin Fields has been traded here, Russell Wilson is your starter, which makes sense because you're only on him for a one-year deal. But in that same sense, you know, the majority of the pay for Russell Wilson is coming from the Broncos, not from the Steelers. So the Steelers really have nothing to lose at this point. They have two starting quality quarterbacks that are going to be in the room there. The only thing I don't like, Emerson, is that I feel like this is going to create a toxic locker room.
I was just going to ask
environment here. That's what I worry about for the Steelers, is that you have two guys here that feel like they have something to prove. So putting those two guys in the same room, regardless of who's starting, I feel like there is going to be some animosity from the other quarterback at some point. So I feel like this could, while it sounds great to have these two options, I feel like down the road as the season goes on, could have a lot of animosity, especially with the reputation that Russell Wilson has been carrying around with him for the past few years.
Jules, how awkward do you think it could get in that locker room?
You know, it'll create issues at times if Wilson doesn't play well. We already know where the narrative is going to go. Here's a fun stat for you: the Patriots are paying Jacoby Brissett twice as much money this season as the Steelers are paying Russell Wilson and Justin Fields combined.
God, good Lord.
Yeah, bottom line, this is what you want in the NFL. You want cheap quarterback play, and they have two of them, so that you can fill out the rest of your roster. Now, the Steelers are still the longest shot to win the division. They're arguably in the toughest division in football. I think they're still plus 950 to win the division. I thought we brought up yesterday, somewhere in that range. If they can fill the rest of the roster out with players and squeeze value out of either of these quarterbacks, so you're giving yourself two tries here. If one doesn't work, you got the other. This could be a good team. You know, this is how 850 on the Steelers. All right, so like. What the Niners do without paying Brock Purdy and putting the pieces around him. That's the blueprint for the Steelers here. They obviously don't have the players the Niners have, but it's a decent Pittsburgh Steelers roster, and if they can add anything else around these two quarterbacks and just give themselves a shot that one of them works out, they could be in a better place than I think we expect next season.
Well, guys, it's been pretty incredible, like first week or so, right, of free agency, just names all over the board, guys being traded, dudes being signed left and right. And on DK Sportsbook, right now, there are some player totals like available for some of these bigger names who have been on the move. We've talked about some of the quarterbacks already, but what about some of these new receivers at new homes? What about some of these new running backs who are in new places right now? Which of these guys, which of their odds and numbers stand out to you right now in the DK Sportsbook, Steve?
Yeah, I like Calvin Ridley at 875 and a half.
Pain.
This feels like a really strong number for really going to this Tennessee Titans offense here, because remember, there's no more Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is now with the Baltimore Ravens. Is the Titans going to move to a more pass-first offense, which is something they really haven't been in the years past? I think gone are the days when this offense is running 45% of the time, which is what we saw in this past season here. That was the 9th highest mark in the league. Who's their new coach now? Brian Callahan. He was in a pass-heavy environment with the Bengals, who ran, by the way, just 36% of the time this past year. That is the second lowest mark in the league. So it's not a surprise for them to bring in somebody like Calvin Ridley, give him that huge bag, and be a dual threat alongside DeAndre Hopkins. So you have those two guys on opposite ends of the field. Those are your two main targets there for Will Levis. Now, there's obviously some question marks surrounding Levis and how he's going to do in his first real full season as the starter with the Titans. So there is some concern there. But we're talking about nearly a 200-yard difference from what Calvin Ridley had last year in an offense, by the way, with the Jaguars Jaguars that was pretty heavy, where the ball was really spread around a lot, whether it was with Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, like the ball really kind of moved around in that Jaguars offense here. So I feel like when it's going to be more condensed to those two guys, because remember, the Titans really don't have, at least as of now, like a real tight end threat. They really don't have like a bona fide wide receiver 3. They don't have that big back starting running back anymore either with Derrick Henry. So condensing that offense down to a more pass-heavy approach, that should do wonders for Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. So give me the over on Ridley.
I loved Ridley's introductory press conference the other day. He's like, listen, I really wanted to stay in Jacksonville. It's where I wanted to be, but in the end, they offered me the most money. I appreciate
At least he's honest, yeah.
I appreciate that honesty from players because, listen, when someone's like, here's $50 million, sure.
Except if you're Anthony Rendon. We don't need to hear that. That's a little too much.
We don't need to talk about someone who's just like, give me that.
I hate the sport. Just get me out of here.
Jules, anyone stand out to you here in terms of player totals right now on the DK Sportsbook?
Yeah, I'm looking at the under on Saquon Barkley. Everybody wants to hype up the Eagles' new toy. 1,125 rushing yards. He's done this only once in the last 5 years. And 4 of those 5 seasons, he's played 13-plus games. So he's been on the field, 80% of those seasons and still not been accomplishing this. So I get it. He's going to see, he's going to get some better running lanes playing in Philly than he did with the Giants. And you see it's juiced to the under there. But number one, he's getting older. We're talking about an aging running back. There's the obvious one. We don't root for injuries, but there's just an easy way to win there if Saquon Barkley misses a handful of games with any kind of injury as a running back that's going to be taking a lot of hits. And then we have the fact that Philly's probably going to mix in other backs. They're not going to use Saquon as a big workhorse in the regular season. They're building for a Super Bowl here. You look at last season, they had DeAndre Swift on the roster. They started Kenneth Gainwell in Foxborough week 1 over him. And then Gainwell got hurt. Swift had a monster week 2 and kind of took over the majority, but it was still a timeshare. Barkley's going to be sharing with the rest of the backs in this backfield. And again, it hasn't been a number that he's been getting to in recent history. There's an injury history there. There's a lot of paths that you can win this under, and you need a really good season from Barkley to get this over in his first season with a new team. I think this number is way too high just due to all the hype. Big name going to a really good team at a position of need.
Yeah, and speaking of a position of need, there's a lot of teams who will be selecting near the top of the draft here, just around a month away from now, who need quarterbacks. And this is expected to be a loaded quarterback class again.
Heard that before.
Right? Like in 2021, but in which Justin Fields was a part of that class. And that also reminded us just what a crapshoot that this position can be, Steve. There's some industry insiders who say the strong expectation around the league is 4 of the first 6 picks will be quarterbacks. And I believe the number for total of quarterbacks selected in the first round of the DK Sportsbook is set at 4.5 right now. Ooh. But there are some lessons to take from that 2021 class and apply it to 2024.
I mean, to be fair, like, you really can't do that every time, right? Because, like, yes, you're going to get burned at times, but other times you're going to pick that right guy. The only thing that makes me think that might not happen, that the insiders are saying here for the first 4 picks, is the Patriots. And I'm not thinking that they're going to trade out of that spot. But, like, they are in prime position to, A, get the 3rd quarterback off the board, or do they use that pick to get Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because what everybody is saying is that, and I feel like this is a term that's thrown around a little too loosely, but to be fair, they say that he is a generational talent, and he is somebody that is a legit game changer. And it is a big need that the Patriots do need. So do they have the option to potentially get the 3rd quarterback off the board, or do they go with, quite frankly, the number 2 prospect in the entire draft, if you're being totally honest here, behind Caleb Williams? So I feel like that is the only position that could kind of ruin that sentiment here. And then, of course, that could come right back, though, if the Vikings move up and trade with one of those teams to get that quarterback. So there is that potential, too. But I feel like the Patriots, they should be getting a quarterback, but at the same time, it's hard to pass up on Harrison, too, as well.
All right, Jules, right now, obviously no value there in Caleb Williams, minus 3,000 for first overall pick. So do you try to get a little creative there with the remaining 2 top quarterbacks, maybe going 2 overall?
2 overall, I still like Jaden Daniels, and that's something that opened plus 200, moved to minus 145, and I think is still bettable at minus 180 because we know with these draft things based on information, the number can just get completely out of hand once information gets out. So I'm pretty confident that that Washington is going with Daniels at 2. If I had to bet anything for the draft right now, it would be that, especially with the move of sending Howell to Seattle and bringing in Mariota, somebody that fits a little bit more of a Jaden Daniels skill set to be the backup, or if he needs to be, start the season out in the starting role and then hand things off to Jaden Daniels. So I think that still makes the most sense, and it's at a bettable number.
All right, guys, appreciate it. We got to take a quick break. We're going to head to TPC Sawgrass next. We will be talking the players, one of the best events of the year. 3 major champions surrounding Xander Schauffele atop the leaderboard. Welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, presented by Comcast Business. Comcast Business is powering connectivity at the Players' Championship. Jeff Ulrich of DraftKings Network is here. Jeff, a lot of great shots entering today's final round. What went down at TPC Sawgrass yesterday in the third round, including the impossible shot. Doug Ghim, the Ghim Reaper, on the iconic 17th green, chipping in from 63 feet for his sixth birdie of the day, taking a similar path as Tiger Woods did in that iconic better than most shot in 2001. What's going through your mind when you watch this impossible shot?
I mean, look, it was very Tiger-esque. We've seen a lot of magic things happen on the green at 17. I mean, like, you look at it, Doug Ghim, a player who, needs a big week, certainly like kind of on the fringes, wants to get in that top 50 for all the elevated events. And this is a big shot for him. I mean, you get a lot of points at the Players, but when you're watching it, it's just like, it just keeps improving, rolling down that hill on 17. And that is a tough chip shot. We see a lot of chip shots hold on the tour from year to year, but when you're going down, like uphill to downhill on the 17th with the water right behind, and you got to be perfect there. So incredible chip shot by impossible chip shot by Doug Ghim, in my opinion, and certainly the best shot of yesterday. I think one of the best moments, seeing the crowd get behind Ghim, moving him up into the top 12, getting him a shot at that top 10. It was a pretty cool moment.
Yeah. Little different of a moment for Wyndham Clark when he steps up to 17. He's aiming to continue this career-altering year. He's looking for his fourth win in less than a year. Some impossible shots for him out of the rough. He is a strong dude. You mentioned off camera how good of a putter he is for a guy who can hit it as far and as strong. That was an impossibly bad shot, though, on 17. He came up 20 yards short of the green. Clark was 2 under through his first 7 holes here, Jeff, and then played the last 11 at even par. Can this guy keep it together? He's not obviously far behind Xander, just a shot here. But what are your thoughts on Wyndham Clark entering the final round?
Yeah, no, my thoughts on Wyndham Clark entering the final round are, I kind of expect him to win this, to be honest. I mean, and like, why not at this point? What you mentioned, 4 wins in like less than 2 years here. When you win the U.S. Open, like, you've got to be able to bounce back. Less than a year, for Wyndham Clark. You've got to be able to bounce back. You've got to be able to take your medicine, take a bogey or a double bogey, and bounce back with big shots. When you see Wyndham Clark chunk a ball like that, like a 12 handicapper would, playing like I would if I was playing 17, and then come back and throw a dart and sink the 9-footer. That's real mental toughness right there. Like, that's something you can't just teach. That's something you gain, you earn. I think Wyndham Clark is going to be an extremely tough out for Xander Schauffele today. I don't think that I'm not putting it past Xander to do it. We've seen Xander close big tournaments as well before, certainly the Olympics, but man, Wyndham Clark has been on a real roll. Yeah. You mentioned the strength out of the rough. He's not intimidated by hitting it out of there. He's big off the tee. If the putter shows up today, it's going to be tough for Xander to hang with him. So I'm honestly expecting big things from Wyndham Clark, and I'm expecting him to win this tournament, if I'm being dead honest. Okay, so Wyndham Clark right now, you can grab him plus 300 odds on the DK Sportsbook to win this thing. And yeah, he showed at the U.S. Open. He's about as gritty and tough as they come. He is going to be a real problem for Schauffele. Schauffele, who shot an insane 65, and most of his damage, Jeff, was done around the greens, highlighted by his impossible shot, a 58-foot birdie putt on the par 4 14th, which helped him get to 17 under and jump past Wyndham Clark, who had a record 36 holes to open this event. Now, while he has closed out tournaments, Jeff, Schauffele has not always been the greatest closer, and he's got a record of winning twice with a 54-hole PGA Tour lead. He's held a 54-hole PGA Tour lead 6 times, has only closed it out twice. And right now, dude, 1-stroke lead over Wyndham Clark and 3 other major winners. How much pressure is on this dude today to finally win that big tournament? He's come so close in this event and also majors. Yeah, I mean, let's not rule out Brian Harman 2 shots back, who just won the Open, another just extremely mentally tough player. This is a real challenge for Xander Schauffele. And you mentioned his record like when we've seen Xander win, especially early in his career, he did these big comebacks. He was always the guy who, he was few shots back going into round 4. Then he'd shoot like 64, close out the event, and grab wins that way. We saw that from him early in his career, but like even his last kind of couple wins, the Scottish Open and the Travelers in 2022, he needed a bit of a meltdown to win the Travelers. Like he needed a bit of help. I'm just not sure he's going to get that help today. He's going to have to go out and win this. You mentioned his game. He's a classy player around the greens. He's a strong putter. He's not quite as strong off the tee as Wyndham Clark, but he's pretty solid. It's just he's going up against two guys who are not going to go away, in my opinion. I would be very shocked if one of these guys didn't give Xander Schauffele a real run. So wouldn't be shocked if we saw like some real drama coming down to 17, 18 guys tied. I don't put it past Schauffele to close this out. He's certainly good enough to do it. But yeah, if I'm picking between him and Clark, I would lean Clark. This is a big spot for Xander, whichever way. Like if you close this out, the stigma of you, not being a guy who can't win a big event or can't close things out immediately goes away. And I think it opens up the room for more big wins from him in the future.
There is not much room for error today at TPC Sawgrass, man. Schauffele's going to have to keep that pedal to the floor here. When we open up the DK Sportsbook, Jeff, and right now, leaders are still hours and hours away from teeing off. Which props stand out to you right now?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, looking at the two balls and a couple other, different categories, like we can go to player rounds, which I really like. Christian Bezuidenhout under 70.5 for a round today. He was 4 under yesterday. I think he actually left a few shots out there. I think he probably could have been about 6 under. He didn't play the par 5 as well. So this is a player who we've seen play well all season, which I like. He went low on Pete Dye's course early in the year, TPC Stadium out in the American Express. I think getting plus 100 for him to go under 70.5 makes a lot of sense. If you're looking at some 2 balls as well, which is just basically matchup bets, CT Pan plus 185 versus Rory McIlroy. CT Pan is one of the leaders in strokes gained tee to green for the week. He's playing really good golf. Putter hasn't heated up yet. He was -2 yesterday. He's in the mix for a top 10. I like this number. I think this is too big. Rory is obviously Rory, but outside of like one stretch, hasn't done much. So in this event, I should say, I like Pan at plus 185 to win that. I really do. He's playing good. And then I'm just going to go to my call. Wyndham Clark is plus 105 to beat Xander Schauffele straight up today. I don't mind that number. I think this should be closer to even. I don't think this is giving Wyndham Clark very much respect. So plus 105 for Wyndham Clark. There's another prop. I think if you want to look to the top 10 and top 20 markets or top 5 markets as well, I mentioned Bezuidenhout. I think our guy Doug Gim at plus 260.
Yep.
Pretty decent value there. Another guy hanging around the top 12. I think if you're looking for top 10 bets, CT Pan, Bezuidenhout, Doug Gim, maybe you take a couple of those guys. Maybe you parlay a couple of those guys. I don't know, but I like all 3 of those guys as looks for the top 10 market. And I think that Doug Gim, a guy who's top 10 here before, is pretty attractive.
A fun market as well in the DK Sportsbook, hole 17 specials here. So you can kind of go back and forth between some of these dudes and who will end up tossing a dart much closer to the pin than the other. Ricky Fowler and Grayson Murray. I just remember the year Ricky Fowler won here, Jeff, and he won in extra holes. Do you remember how many times he birdied 17 that year? 5 times. Every time he got on the tee box, he birdied it, dude. There's something about this hole that either scares the living daylight out of you, or you're just like, it's a $140, $145. Don't overthink it. Don't be intimidated by the water. But the mental toughness standing on that tee with people in the stadium course surrounding you and screaming at the top of their lungs, that's not easy. And we saw that with Wyndham Clark yesterday, chunking it 20 yards short.
Yeah, and certainly, like, you mentioned Ricky Fowler. I mean, the one thing this course does, it does cater in a few spots to like those real good wedge players, the short iron players, guys like Webb Simpson, guys like Matt Kuchar, guys like Ricky Fowler, who have all won here before. So I think when you're looking at props like that, looking at names, guys who are typically good short iron players, it's not really Wyndham Clark's strength either, if we're being honest. He's more of a power player, but certainly has been able to putt and chip well this week, enough to get himself in contention. So yeah, something to look out for 17 for sure.
Okay, and you are feeling Brian Harman today. You really like maybe Brian Harmon to make that comeback. Man, he sits there over the ball, has like 15 waggles. If TV starts showing him, this is going to be a 7-hour round today.
I mean, it's funny because, like Xander Schauffele to close us out is going to have to beat two of the last two major winners. I mean, that's pretty crazy when you think about it, but it's still Brian Harmon and Wyndham Clark, right? Like, Wyndham Clark wasn't a big name a few years ago. I mean, Brian Harmon, kind of the same thing, was just a tour grinder. So, I mean, I give Brian Harmon a ton of respect. I think on this course, it's going to be a tough beat. I like Clark more than Harmon, but certainly Brian Harmon, I'm not expecting him to shrivel up and die today either.
It is going to be an epic round. Final round of the players. Thank you so much, Jeff. And we'll have a live report with Christopher Powers coming up from TPC Sawgrass next. 5 more bids, automatic bids will be dished out. Let's talk some best bets for today's conference tournament finals. off our second hour here of The Sweat, presented by Comcast Business. Comcast Business is powering connectivity at the Players' Championship, and we have Christopher Powers, who will be joining us of Golf Digest later in the show for a live report from TPC Sawgrass. Plus, Joe Dallaire of the Action Network is here to help you navigate all the NBA bets on today's 7-game slate. But let's get back to college hoops first. And tomorrow, we've got a doozy for you, folks. The Sweat Bracket Breakdown. 6 o'clock Monday night Eastern time up until 9, little 3-hour special. Tons and tons of guests. We'll rip through all the fun storylines for the men's bracket, the women's bracket. So join us on DraftKings Network and VSiN tomorrow night, Monday night, March 18th, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Julian Edlow has returned because we have 5 conference tournament finals today. Hello, my friend. 5.
Hi.
The last 5 automatic bids into the tournament. Starting with, let's go, the SEC Championship. Finally here before tonight's selection show. 4-seeded Auburn squaring off with 6-seeded Florida, dude. The Gators looking to win their second straight against the Tigers after dominating the first matchup in Gainesville. So, are you backing Auburn to grab and seek and complete its revenge tour?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It's a revenge spot for Auburn. Auburn is the better team. It was an awful spot when Auburn went down to the Swamp and lost as a short favorite to the Gators. I think they were coming off a huge home win over Alabama. I backed Florida in that game. Didn't think it would be that lopsided, but got the win. Thing is, Florida's pretty good, and they're getting a lot of points here. If this were closer to a pick, I would go to Auburn. I think they're the better team, but at 5.5, I'll probably take 5.5 with the Gators and hope they can keep it close. They were getting smashed yesterday by A&M and came back to win that game pretty handily. Florida is no joke. They're playing well. They can make some noise in the tournament. Short board today. Don't love the board today, but the closest thing that I'm probably to betting here would be taking 5.5 with the Gators.
And Bruce Pearl's club finding its stride again with what looks like one of the nation's deepest teams here as the postseason grind continues to march along. And then you poke over to the Big Ten championship, and it's Wisconsin, Illinois. And Wisconsin really is just played like trash to start February, to end the regular season, and then all of a sudden, like we've seen teams do in the past, you get hot at the right time, so they're going to be colliding with Illinois. What do you like here?
Yeah, if you just take February off of Wisconsin's calendar, they're a top 10 team in college basketball with the rest of their resume. The problem is I think they went 2-7, something like that, in February, and were dreadful. They're getting their mojo back a little bit, but it is hard to back a team off of an overtime game-winning or game-tying bucket to get to overtime and then game-winning bucket in overtime over Purdue. It's hard to come back and go with them the next day. And I know Illinois was not doing well against Nebraska, had a huge comeback, a Big Ten tournament record 40 points for Terrence Shannon in that game, the Illini best player. But this would be Illinois for me, laying the 3 points. They are the better team, like the Auburn-Florida analogy, except we're kind of in the ballpark here where I don't mind laying a possession worth of points. So in this one, I think it's a similar talent gap from like Illinois to Wisconsin and Auburn to Florida, but the number is much different. So in this case, I will lay 3 with Illinois, especially given just kind of the letdown spot that the Badgers have to be in here after everything they had to do yesterday to battle with Zach Edey and get that win.
Yeah, Wisconsin here, Jules. How about this? Its first 4 games of the month of February, then closed the regular season with 8 losses in its final 11 games. So that's probably something, though, if they're able to. I mean, are they in? They're in if they lose today, right, to Illinois? Either way?
Oh, they're in. They're
Okay.
in. Like I said, you take February off the calendar, they're a top 10 team. So they'll withstand that one crappy month. It'll affect their seeding and drop them certainly. But both of these teams in the SEC championship game and the Big Ten championship game are all in. They're just kind of playing for seeding and bragging rights here.
Okay, let's get to the A10 here. Duquesne knocked off St. Bonaventure for the third time this season. My wife, a Bonnie's grad, was quite emotional inside our living room. So now Duquesne and VCU here, my friend. Which side are you backing?
Yeah, well, as you know, Emerson, I backed the Bonnies relentlessly a couple of years ago when they had what should have been one of the best teams in college basketball, and they let me down time after time.
Yep.
So the Bonnies can go ahead and rot in hell. But if we go to this game, Duquesne has taken some sharp money. I said yesterday, if you like VCU, who we did get on the money line, just to bet them plus 170 to win the A10 tournament. So you got a good number now. I like the way Duquesne is playing. This is a tough game, and the number's going up to 2.5 now with Duquesne. It's a tough game to call. I'm leaning taking the points with the dog, given the way they're playing right now, and I think they match up well with VCU, which is important. But hopefully you have some of that VCU plus 170 from yesterday. You can play it back with some 2.5 on Duquesne and see what happens. I got a little bit more to do on this game. We'll see. Right now, it's probably a pass for me.
All right, so we have an interesting one over in the AAC as well. We mentioned how now this is likely to be a too big conference because neither Temple or UAB were going to be in this thing. So this was about, 9-10 days ago that UAB absolutely destroyed Temple. The Owls at one point prior to that blowout lost 10 games in a row, yet you have Temple here defining the odds, beating the odds, crushing the odds, and Temple entering today's game having ripped off 5 consecutive wins, both straight up and against the spread, Julian. So how are you going to navigate this one?
Well, let's just address the elephant in the room. Since Temple got absolutely smoked and has an open investigation on point shaving, they are 5-0 and have 5 straight wins as underdogs, with the most recent one coming over FAU as a 14-point dog. So whatever happened there, Temple has turned some kind of corner. UAP is playing well. Good win over USF. Better win by Temple over FAU. I don't know what's going on over there, but I trust that they are playing hard right now. This one would be Temple plus 7 or pass for me. I think they're playing really well right now. I don't know what else to say. And USF was supposed to be a tournament team as well. I'm not convinced. I don't know if FAU is in or not. I think that's going to be really interesting when the committee has to decide that. But either way, a bid absolutely stolen out of this conference.
Temple started AAC play 1-11. All right, the Owls' latest shocker, that 14-point win as a dog over FAU, the third largest upset in the college basketball conference tournaments of the last decade and biggest since 2019. I have no idea where this team is coming from, but the team is absolutely here. I know yesterday when we talked some Ivy League action, you didn't really have much of an opinion on it. Do you have one now that the final matchup is set?
The opinion you forced me to give was wrong. I said you might as well just bet Princeton to win the tournament around even money, and down they go to the Brown Bears as Princeton a minus 550 favorite. I don't know, the Ivy League. These guys are all smarter than me. This is why I don't bet the Ivy League.
It's very true. They'll be the doctor giving you like your yearly physical here by 2027.
Yeah, looking forward to that that physical. Hopefully March Madness doesn't take too much life out of me by the time we have that appointment. I would take, I'm setting myself up to look like an idiot again. I would take 8 points with Brown. They're playing well. They just beat the best team in the conference. You're getting 8 against Yale. I think Yale probably ultimately wins, but 8 is a lot of points for a team playing this well that just went up against Princeton yesterday. So, probably setting myself up to look like an idiot again, but that's what I would do.
Isn't Rhode Island a basketball state there with Brown? Come on, man. You're a Rhode Island guy.
Yeah, I love the Brown Bears. They play some great ball.
Which of these tournaments, depending on the result, could shake up the field of 68 later tonight? Which one has the opportunity to shake it up the most?
Not much is going to change today because either Brown or Yale is getting in, either Duquesne or VCU is getting in, and either Temple or UAB is getting in. Now, they would be different seeds if they made it, but then the other 2 games, Florida and Auburn are in. Wisconsin and Illinois are in. I guess maybe if Auburn wins, it's a good win for them and could maybe build on their seeding. I think Auburn's the best team playing today. They're the most dangerous team playing today. So maybe if they can get a higher seed, if they can stay out of UConn's bracket, keeps them a little safer to maybe make a Final Four run. Not a huge impactful day on these games, though, necessarily. More about just getting there and seeing what the selection committee does come Selection Sunday.
You mentioned ACC earlier. Is there another conference that you're just not that high on, that may be a little overrated as we enter the tournament?
I don't think the Pac-12 is very good. Arizona's kind of the heavyweight there, but they've gotten pushed around at times. I think we could see the Pac-12. Other than Oregon, who won the conference championship and is now healthy. They haven't been healthy all year. I do kind of like how Oregon is playing. But I think the Pac-12 is potentially a fade. And then, like we said, the Big 12 might be the best conference in college hoops, but Iowa State and Houston have problems scoring. They have great defenses, but they have problems scoring. It would not shock me to see a Houston go down early, depending on that matchup.
Let's not sleep on the Mountain West either, my friend. Okay?
Well, Mountain West is really good. If you ask me who's good, we could start talking some Mountain West. They are definitely not a conference down.
What do you say we talk about who's really good in the NBA with Joe Delera coming up next? There's some big stars in action today around the association, although some have questionable tags, some have already been ruled out. So let's dish out some best bets next. There's around 1 month left in the NBA regular season before playoffs begin with the play-in tournaments. Close battle for positioning here in the postseason field. Current standing showing a tight group in both conferences, really. So let's break it all down, including bets for today with Julian Edlow. He has returned, and Joe Delara of the Action Network. He is back as well. Good to see you, Joe. Looking at
good to see you guys.
Hey, looking at yesterday's action here, Joe, what was your biggest takeaway? Anything that you think will really impact this race, like down the stretch?
I mean, that win that the Knicks had was pretty awesome. I selfishly, as a Knicks fan, I thought that was like a great win. But I do think that it does show for teams or like backers of New York that, Jalen Brunson can be that type of 1A and just dominate a game like despite throwing doubles, whatever. So really like an awesome win for the New York Knicks, I felt. And I think one of the more surprising things too is when you look at, some of the games with like the Thunder or even the Bulls, right? Like the Thunder, they still managed to win their games. The Grizzlies kind of put up a better fight against them, but they just always seem to consistently win. They don't have any letdown games, even against, like bad, quote unquote, bad opponents. And then like Chicago has looked incredible lately, and they're kind of making that push to really secure a spot in the Eastern Conference play-in. And when we look even at the Warriors and the Lakers, we're gonna have to see what this Anthony Davis injury kind of looks like. It's an eye injury, so it's not like his lower body, but hopefully he's not out for an extended period of time.
Yeah, they've got a little bit of cushion there in that 10 spot, but not too much wiggle room. Jules, did anything stand out to you yesterday?
Big win for the Warriors, who are in that 10 seed and trying to battle against the Lakers in the 9 seed to get that one outright on the road as a short dog and close that gap a little bit. But time's running out. Like, it's going to be pretty surprising if we don't see some combination of matchups of Suns, Mavericks, Warriors, Lakers in these play-in rounds to go up against your OKCs, your Minnesotas, these teams that have not been there that are going to clinch these high seeds. So Golden State picking up a little bit of ground, maybe moving up, caught my attention. But I don't think we're going to be able to escape this storyline of some combination of very veteran teams that have been there, done that, going up against a young Minnesota or OKC squad in the first round, which is going to create some pretty interesting matchups. Just like years past with the Warriors against the Kings or the Lakers against the Grizzlies, when everybody is piling on that lower seed that goes off as a favorite.
And today's NBA 7-game slate should provide some fireworks. Again, there's some big stars involved on today's slate, guys. Some of them with some questionable tags. Some have been ruled out. So you may see a lot of these guys in street clothes chilling, watching their teammates go to work. I mean, one of the matchups today includes the Suns and the Bucks. Joe, you were saying earlier about these two teams being just really terrible at covering the spread.
Yeah, both teams are really like below 50% in terms of covering the spread. So we're not really finding like a big edge there, just, based on what the trends are. Both are super popular teams that people, want to bet on. They have superstars. They both were title favorites or, title contenders, at least going into the season. I think in this spot, though, I'm comfortable grabbing the points with Phoenix. I know that, Giannis is a little bit on the report. We'll see what exactly happens with that. Obviously, the line would swing pretty significantly one way or the other. So I might throw half of my wager on it now, see where it kind of settles up at. Because if Giannis is out, I definitely like Phoenix. And even if Giannis is in, I probably like this if it jumps to Phoenix +4, Phoenix +4.5. I just like the spot for the Suns. I think what they do stylistically on offense is really important. They take a lot of mid-range shots, which is normally a shot that nobody wants to take. It's a shot that teams want to allow, and Milwaukee kind of does that. But at the same time, it means that Milwaukee has to change their defensive scheme really to cover a team like Phoenix, who wants to just tackle you from the mid-range. And with Durant, Booker, etc. I do like what Phoenix can do here against Milwaukee, who also kind of gives up some threes too. So, you get those kickouts to guys like Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon, etc. I think it's a good matchup for Phoenix from a stylistic perspective.
Jules, you're a big mid-range guy in your men's league game. What's your approach here to Suns Milwaukee?
Yeah, mid-range is like the paint for me. If you go in the paint, you're going to roll an ankle, and when you roll an ankle when you're old, it doesn't go well. So yeah, I'm 15 feet and out. As you know, well known in the men's league, Emerson. I'll send you some tweets from my league later. But I do agree with Joe. I would side with Phoenix here. I haven't bet it yet like him. We're at a stage where there's just so much up in the air in these NBA games that you can just wait. Like there's another game we're going to talk about later where I'm going to wait for the injury report and then bet the side I want because I'm pretty confident it's going to go the way that we think. So I think 1 o'clock primetime game, I think Giannis is going to play at home, and I think we can get Suns 3 to 4 range. So I'll probably wait, and that would be the side that I would be interested in as well. But, we've been doing all these March Madness segments, and we give out, jumping on these openers, and numbers can fly, whether it's the right side or not. Like UNC opened laying 8.5 and closed laying 10.5 and lost outright. But you got to get in on the number. In the NBA, it's all about timing, and there is no rush necessarily. You got to time this out, and that's what we're looking at today with really all those games that interest me. But agree with Joe's points on the Suns. That would be the side for me in this one, and we'll wait and see where the number goes.
Yeah, so maybe one of those games you're waiting for the injury report here, Joe, is going to be the Nuggets and the Mavericks. I think all eyes right now are on Luka. So how do you get an edge here? We know Denver's just been on this absolute ridiculous tear since the All-Star break.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing for me. Denver's just been dynamic, right? Since the All-Star break, they have the second best net rating in the NBA. Dallas is 15th. So while Denver's plus 11.4, Dallas is plus 0.5. I know that Luka obviously is going to swing the spread. And I think they're kind of hedging with this line. It's moved from the 3 to like a 3.5, 4 since the open. And I think the point that Julian made about trying to wait and get the best line does make a lot of sense. I do think that in this spot, I like Denver really either way. But Denver's just been an absolute wagon. And I think that Denver has some of the best tools to limit what Dallas can do, right? You have a guy like Aaron Gordon who is so multifaceted in terms of his defense. He can cover a million different positions. He can cover a million different players. And I think for a guy like Luka, who doesn't necessarily move the fastest, but is extremely skilled, extremely technical, throwing a guy like Aaron Gordon, who is so physical, is probably one of the best defensive matchups you could throw at him. And then even for Kyrie Irving, you can throw guys like KCP on him. You could throw a little bit of Christian Brown. So there definitely are some options there for Denver to throw defensively. Whereas for Dallas, there's really just no stopping what Denver can do offensively between Jokic, Murray, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, KCP. That starting lineup, I think, is going to really have a good time here against the Dallas Mavericks in this spot.
All right, so Jules, how much do you consider leaning maybe towards the Mavericks right now with plus money, or do you really need to sit and just wait and see what happens with Luka?
Oh no, this is Denver for sure. Okay. I said I was waiting on Phoenix. This one I'll do like Joe said with the Suns. I'll bet some Denver now and then probably bet some Denver later because I'm comfortable at 3.5 either way. I was pretty surprised when I saw how short this was, especially with Doncic, up in the air. Now, it's not a back-to-back. It's a Sunday primetime. It's against the Nuggets. It's against his buddy Jokic. I'll be pretty surprised if he doesn't play, and that's why there's some incentive to wait because maybe we get 2.5, 3 here. In which case, I'm very interested. I think that's way too much respect for Dallas. We've seen Denver create mismatches for everyone, just like Joe laid out. So, and the Jokic mismatch is glaring. Like Dallas really needs big bodies, and they did the best they could at the deadline. But when it comes to covering Jokic, it's not like you're going to pick up Gafford at the deadline and solve your Jokic issues. There's still a glaring hole there in the middle. So this is absolutely Denver for me. And I know we got 90 seconds left. Joe, you got a prop for a guy you mentioned here on the Denver side too?
Yeah, I like Aaron Gordon over 22.5 PRA. He's 3 for 3 versus Dallas over his last 3, averaging 33.3 PRA. I just like the spot. I think that they probably if Luka does play, they probably put Luka on him, which is just like a spot where Luka can try to sag off. But Gordon is just so slippery. He's such a good cutter. I think that there's going to be some defensive lapses on the Dallas side where he just kind of sneaks in, grabs some boards, gets that easy alley-oop. So I like him to go over the 22.5 PRA.
Jules, you got anything you want to add to that? Any other props on your card?
The only thing that I'll say is Joe joined us 2 weeks ago, and we talked a lot about Emmanuel Quickly props, and he's still just been getting so much usage with the Raptors. He had a terrible shooting game against Orlando. He plays Orlando again. His points, rebounds, assists has been something that most games I've just been playing, and you're going to lose a couple here and there. But if you keep playing that out, you're going to win. And then last week on the segment, I mentioned Naz Reid points, which since Towns has gone down, just play that every time. And even when Gobert goes out, it was over 19.5 last night. He hit it again. Those are the two props just in general right now in NBA that I'm looking at.
All right, Jules and Joe, we appreciate you guys. The Killer Jays coming up. Final round report live from TPC Sawgrass with Christopher Powers of Golf Digest. Welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, presented by Comcast Business. Comcast Business is powering connectivity at the Players' Championship. Christopher Powers of Golf Digest joining us now live from the Players in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. You've been getting your steps in at Sawgrass, dude, following guys all week. You even got to stalk future number 1 NFL pick Caleb Williams for a little bit on Thursday. What's been the highlight of the tournament so far for you?
Well, selfishly, I was out following Patrick Cantlay and Victor Hovland yesterday. I had a little matchup bet that I wanted to sweat out in person. And actually got to chatting with Joe LaCava for a bit, talking about our New York Rangers. And then ran into him again after the round, and he said, do we have a score yet? So I was very proud to tell him that the Rangers were up 3-2 at the time over the Penguins, and then eventually got the win. So selfishly, again, that's my highlight of the week.
Yeah, that's very nice. What's your reaction to like the scores right now too? Because scoring seems to be just coming at a ridiculous pace. Birdies left and right, all the good stuff. Multiple eagles we've seen on this course.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when it happens on another week, we kind of say, "Oh, another birdie fest on the PGA Tour." But here it's different. It's very exciting. It's such a great finish. It's plenty of drama down the stretch, and it's obviously what we were talking about pre-show. It's based off the weather this week. Yeah. It's benign. There's not much wind. I heard Brian Harmon talking yesterday about since they've moved it to March, there's normally a wind coming out of the west, and it's obviously been cold and rainy here last few years, but that has not been the case this week. The conditions are pretty prime for scoring, but it's going to make for a great Sunday. It's going to be super exciting. Someone in the back of the pack might be able to chase him down, but I don't know. Xander looked pretty good yesterday, and obviously Wyndham Clark is playing some really good golf right now. But yeah, I'm excited for more birdies on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, if someone from the back of the pack could chase him down, how far back do you think someone could actually chase down guys like Xander and Wyndham there at the top?
Well, keep in mind, I have a bet on Sahith Theegala this week, so I'm going to go ahead and say the guys at 12 under have a chance. And obviously, one of those other guys at 12 under is Scotty Scheffler, so you can't count him out either. So, you you match the course record that Tom Hoagie shot last year. You shoot 63, get to, what would that be, 20 under? I think you got a chance.
Yeah, and I know I was reading your article yesterday, it was, where you compared Theegala and you said, this guy's the new Jordan Spieth, because I was following you on Twitter. It seemed like, damn, Theegala is just all over the place. He's not known as the most accurate driver. Every tweet you had was him standing behind a freaking tree. And then the guy goes out there and posts only like one bogey. So I used that, and I said on the show yesterday, bet him for top 10 in this tournament. It was plus like 180 yesterday. Now it's minus 225. So A, thank you for that. And second, he had some high praise for Brian Harmon, who is obviously very close to the top of the leaderboard now. What did he say about Harmon?
He did. He actually called him one of the most impressive golfers he's ever seen. And I was out following them last night. And honestly, I have to agree. The guy can still pound the driver. I know he gets he can't keep up with the big boys kind of narrative thrown at him, but he still hits it far. He's unbelievable with his irons, of course. And then once some putts start to fall, he's kind of like, Ray Allen from 3-point range. He doesn't miss.
And you mentioned Scotty is in that neck of the woods of guys potentially within striking distance. If he can somehow historically come back from, I think it's a 5-stroke hole right now, he would become the first back-to-back winner in this tournament's 50-year history, for crying out loud. Why do you think it is, Chris, we haven't seen somebody repeat as a champion at the Players?
I think it's the volatility factor of this golf course. You were just talking about it with Theegala. You get a little squirrely off the tee, and doubles and even triples come into play very, very quickly. And obviously the water on the final 3 holes can swallow up some balls as well. So it's just such a volatile golf course. You have to be playing well to have any chance. I know that sounds kind of like obvious, but some guys can show up and randomly play well at a course they've had success at over the years, even if they're playing poorly. This week, you got to be firing on all cylinders to have any chance. Obviously, Scotty is, so no one would be surprised if he was the first guy to pull off that feat.
Yeah, I talked about it with DraftKings Network's Jeff Ulrich earlier in this show here, Christopher, about Xander Schauffele. So I think he's held a 54-hole lead maybe 6 times. He's only been able to close it out twice. How much room for error does he have today on that course?
Well, watching his round yesterday, it required quite a bit of scrambling. Obviously, that's a little bit hard to sustain. So we'll see if he can kind of reel it back in and hit a few more greens today. I kind of expect him to. I think he's kind of ready. I don't think he wants to start veering into 2-year wind drought territory. His last one came at that Scottish Open back in, I think it was July of 2022. So I think he's itching to get it done today. I kind of think he will. Obviously, like I said, I'd like to see Theegala make a charge, and maybe even Scheffler, and Fitzpatrick certainly scares me as well. But I think Xander's gonna handle the scandal today for sure.
What have you seen from Rory McIlroy? The only reason I bring him up, despite him, being 8-9 back of the leaders, is he's just the second player to make 21 or more birdies or eagles through 3 rounds of the Players' Championship. Like, those numbers are insane, again, for someone currently 8-9 back. And how does he clean up the mistakes? So it's been 6 bogeys, 3 water balls, I think 3 double bogeys here. What has been his issue around TPC Sawgrass not being able to put it all together?
It's a great question. The word that would jump out to me is frustrating. I think we're all frustrated when we watch Rory McIlroy, especially when he makes this many birdies. I guess, you got to be able to avoid the big numbers. He's not been able to do that this week, and he hasn't been able to avoid the water, as we saw on Thursday. And it's kind of that left miss that's probably what's caused him some issues. He likes to hit a big high draw, and he can get a little pulley with it, as he did on the 7th hole Thursday, as well as the 18th hole. So that's a tough shot to kind of get rid of here when you're playing at Sawgrass. There's so much trouble everywhere, but especially down the left side of a lot of these holes.
Yeah, I was out there on Wednesday for the practice round with my nephew. I mean, the course is just electric. It's a fan favorite. It's really fun to watch golf there. Where does this tournament rank among your favorite tournaments to cover?
It might be number 1. I've been coming here for 7 years now. I tell everybody when I get home, like, you got to go down there, make a trip out of it. If you're a golf fan who wants to see a million shots, a million players, bounce around the course, see a bunch of different groups, I really don't think there is a better experience as a fan. I truly believe that I've been to the Masters, and as fun as it is, tough watch, especially outside the ropes. Not the case here. You can see just about everybody you want in a short period of time. You can hang out at 16 and 17 and have a blast too, or bounce around. So I would rank it number 1, to be honest with you.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I know it was a bummer for a lot of fans out there too, not being able to see Tiger Woods in the field this week. This was the last of his exemptions into this event, thanks to his 2019 Masters victory here, Christopher. Have we seen him tee it up at the Players for the last time, you think?
Man, I hate making these proclamations.
I know, it's terrible.
But I think it might be, because you would think this would be such an ideal rep, as he likes to call it, such an ideal spot. It's flat. He's had success here. It's kind of directly up his alley. It's like a tactical kind of test, shape shots, attack with your iron, scramble when you need to. It's everything he loves to do, and there's plenty of juice here. Obviously, it's not a major, but it basically is. So for him to kind of skip it in his last year of it being exempt, like he said, it kind of signals to me like it could be the end here for Tiger.
So you think we likely see him arrive at Augusta next month with only 1 round under his belt so far this year?
Yep, correct. Again, hate making those proclamations, but yeah, that seems like where we're going.
Yeah, I was saying on the show a few weeks ago, it's like, at least when the odds come out, bet him to make the cut. I don't know if he finishes the tournament, because he's trying to set that tournament record of 24 straight cuts made. Like last year, hit 23. Didn't finish out the weekend. So we'll see what happens there. One more question for you before you go. You've been there all week. You're on top of just this ever-changing game in golf. It's in this weird spot. The last 6 months, a lot has happened. Jay Monahan held his first press availability since Atlanta, at the end of last season there at the Tour Championship. What were some of your takeaways there, and kind of the latest on this ongoing negotiation with LIV, and either trying to figure it out or not trying to figure it out?
Yeah, unfortunately, I missed that one on Tuesday. I arrived Wednesday, but based off what I read and watched, it was a little bit of a bleep show. I don't know if we're allowed to curse on this show.
No, bleep is good. Keep it at bleep.
Okay, good. I mean, obviously, not even mentioning John Rahm by name was a little strange, kind of the latest strange move in a series of strange moves that Jay Monahan has made. But then the other takeaway was he did say they're starting to make a lot of good progress with the PIF. And then you have that report from Golf Week's Eamon Lynch that there's supposedly a clandestine meeting on the books for Monday, tomorrow in Ponte Vedra Beach with the tour's player directors. So that makes me think like we're nearing a resolution here, which obviously everyone wants, especially golf fans who are pretty fatigued by it all. And I would imagine they want to get this done before the Masters next month. So I think we're getting closer to what everybody wants.
All right, Christopher Powers of Golf Digest. Thanks for making some time with us. Have fun out there at TPC Sawgrass, dude. We really, really appreciate you. We're going to wrap up the show next, kind of recap some of the best bets here and how to navigate Selection Sunday, baby. Following the selection show tonight, there is going to be a bajillion things to talk about when it comes to the NCAA tournament fields. And yes, I'm talking the men's field and the women's field, and tomorrow, the sweat bracket breakdown, Monday night, March 18th, 6 Eastern Time to 9 Eastern Time on DraftKings Network and VSiN. We will be breaking all of it down, all the matchups, all the superstars on both sides, maybe which teams are primed to put on that beautiful glass slipper and become the next wave, etch their name in the trophy of the next wave of Cinderellas. Julian Edlow will be part of that show. Julian Edlow is part of this show, and bringing us home here, I want to go ahead and just kind of recap a little bit of what we've talked about throughout the show, because we've had a lot of NCAA tournament talk here, Jules. And starting here with the bubble. You said earlier there's not really necessarily a big bubble right now. So what does it look like? Can you remind the people at home?
Well, I just think these teams like St. John's, Seton Hall, Indiana State, that people were hopeful would get in, even an FAU, I'm not convinced on, but I think they will ultimately get in. All these teams that had hopes of getting in probably no longer are, because all these other teams, your NC States, that steals a bid. You have these games today in the A10 with Dayton getting in, but you have Duquesne versus VCU, Temple versus UAB. All these games are getting in teams that weren't supposed to be in. So the bubble has burst. It's disappeared for a lot of these teams that are better teams that did not win their conference tournaments, that are now on the outside looking in, because we have to make room for these conference tournament winners. And in the process, these teams getting in are going to eat up some seeds that they don't necessarily deserve. So a lot of these 11, 12 seeds are going to be teams that weren't supposed to be in the tournament, but now are, instead of some of these bubble teams. So your 4, 5, 6 seeds are going to be playing lesser teams. They're still playing the same 11, 12, 13 seeds, but they're just not as good a teams as we were expecting, because you're playing Temple instead of St. John's. That's a huge difference, and that's going to make a big impact when this bracket comes out.
Yeah, that chaotic Saturday yesterday, no doubt going to be spelling doom for a few bubble teams, and no matter who wins today, there are still 5 conference tournament champions to be crowned. Someone is going to get bumped from the bubble. Yes, yesterday was absolutely wild. So for some of the favorites, some of the bigger dogs who did go down and who were upset, who hurt their seeding the most?
Who hurt their seeding the most it's a tough question, because it kind of ties into the first question of some of these teams. Tennessee probably cost themselves a 1 seed this week. Kentucky lost their opening game. Purdue didn't really hurt themselves with that loss. But, those teams that did hurt themselves, it ultimately isn't going to hurt them as much because of these bubble teams getting in. They're still going to be playing very beatable teams. They're not going to get as tough of a matchup. So even though they slide down in seeding, these teams that are getting in at the bottom aren't there's still going to be upsets, but they're just not as tough of a matchup as some of these other teams that we thought would get in, and now are going to be forced out because of wins like NC State, etc. So, Tennessee not getting a 1 seed probably really, really hurt itself. Arizona going down early in the Pac-12 hurt itself, but ultimately the teams that hurt themselves are, Indiana State for not beating Drake going back to last week, because you needed to win that conference tournament to get in now. It's too late.
Earlier you shared with us UConn, I think minus 110 to make the Final Four. Who else are you confident in right now joining them?
Nobody. You got to see the bracket, and all of these teams are very beatable, and we saw that this week. If there's a hot team that I think is playing really well, I've liked Auburn all year. I think Auburn is worth a bet, but I'm not going to bet Auburn now. They could wind up the 2 seed in UConn's bracket. So again, we want to wait until the bracket comes out to be betting these things, especially since it's Selection Sunday. We got to wait. It's almost 10 a.m. All you have to do is wait 8 hours, 7 hours, and we're going to be betting on this stuff. So with a clear path. So the only bet that I would place pre-flop without seeing a bracket, UConn is head and shoulders above the rest. I'll take them minus 110 to reach the Final Four in Arizona. That would be the first time they've gotten on a plane in the tournament because they're playing 2 in Brooklyn, and if they win those, it's 2 in Boston. They're going to have home floor against teams that they're going to have a pretty big advantage over. UConn minus 110 to make the Final Four is a fantastic bet, I think.
So you're not really confident in anybody else right now, it sounds like. So there's no way for someone watching right now to kind of hop on DK Sportsbook and maybe get a leg up before we see potential paths like of these teams?
UConn could be a leg up. Like the bracket could come out and they could get a very weak beatable. Like if it was UNC for them as a 2 seed, I think UConn would smoke Carolina. So like UConn could get a better flop and that could go to minus 120, minus 130. So that's why I'm saying I don't think there's not a team you can put in UConn's way that's going to make this go back to plus money or back to plus 110. It can only go the other way. So UConn is the answer to every question right now. I'll bet them pre-flop. I think there could be value there. We don't know. There will be value on other teams once we see the bracket. I just can't guess who those teams will be.
Yeah. What about the history of some of these teams in the tournament? And I bring that up because St. Peter's, strutting back to the NCAA tournament 2 years after stunning number 2 Kentucky in the first round and becoming the first 15 seed to ever reach the Elite Eight. So the mere sight of St. Peter's will probably inspire a little bit of uncomfortableness, I guess, some angst in fans of whichever team that St. Peter's ends up facing in the first round, right?
Yeah, I'll fade that narrative. That was a different team. That was Shaheen Holloway. That run got him the Seton Hall job. The large majority of those players have moved on and grown mustaches and gotten Buffalo Wild Wings and fields. So it's just those guys aren't there. This is a different team. Good for St. Peter's. I'll be shocked if Lightning strikes twice.
Okay. All right. So in terms of best bets today, give me your best bet or give me a couple of your favorite bets here ahead of these 5 final bids, automatic bids being dished out.
Yeah, well, UConn Final Four for sure is my best bet. But in terms of these games, I haven't bet anything yet, but a couple of dogs that I will lean towards would probably be Florida and Duquesne. I like the way Duquesne's playing, and I like the way they match up with VCU. And Florida, I know it's a revenge spot for Auburn, but they're just getting a lot of points there for a really good team. And then for a favorite, I would lay it with Illinois. I think that when you look at what Wisconsin did yesterday, they've clearly recovered from their poor February. But going off a shot to go into overtime against Purdue, and then a game winner in overtime against Purdue, and now you got to turn around to play a better Illinois team. Not that Wisconsin's not going to be up for the Big Ten championship game. They will be. It's just a tough spot off what they did yesterday. So I'd probably lay it with the more talented Illinois team.
Do you have any favorite storylines entering this tournament, Jules? Grambling has punched its first ever tourney ticket. They went 0-28 10 years ago and then lost 10 of its first 12 games to open the year, but only lost 4 times in its last 22 games. So yeah, let's go. Choo-choo down Narrative Street. I know you just said ignore like the St. Peter's one or you're fading that one, but do you have any storylines you are excited about as the field will be rounded out tonight?
I mean, I think the cool storylines are, Long Beach State has they fired their coach on Monday or Tuesday or whatever it is, and they win their conference tournament, and now they're dancing with a guy that they canned this week. NC State is a great storyline, winning those 5 games, getting the extension and the bonuses for Kevin Keats. And again, I'll be the Grinch here and fade an NC State team that everybody's going to love to back when this bracket comes out. So yeah, those are some good ones. There was the Akron game last night where Akron wound up winning their conference title because of an intentional foul by the other team when they thought they were losing and they were winning, and it cost your team to go dance. So that's a negative storyline, I guess, but it got one team in.
Yeah.
So yeah, there'll be a lot of good stuff. I'm excited for it. But yeah, I would say just like we started the show, everybody's going to be talking about NC State. I'll fade them.
All right, my man. Well, you're excited for that. I'm excited for this, the Sweat Bracket Breakdown. We will see everybody for a special edition of The Sweat tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Thanks for hanging with us, folks.